Dear friends, it's white to play in this position. Please tell me how white should proceed from here. In today's episode, we are talking about the pin in chess, a very powerful tactical weapon. The anatomy of chess tactics continues with four instructive positions. In every single position, there is an underlying theme, and we'll also discuss that theme together, folks. Are you ready for this session? Then tell me the first idea for white that is very powerful and logical. And I'm sure many of you have found the move bishop e5. By the way, this position was shown by Jonathan Spielman in his book, Jon Spielsman Chess Puzzle Book. So thank you, Jonathan Spielman, a very powerful British player, for highlighting this strong team. White to play, and the first move is very, very natural. Bishop e5 pins the knight. We are talking about absolute pin in this case. The knight cannot move because there's a king on the backside of the knight, right? That's what we mean by absolute pins in chess. This forces king g7 as the only move. And already here, folks, please observe the situation that black is almost in a complete bind and zugzwang. So this will shape your next idea for white. White to play, there are only two winning moves for white here. Please stop the video, go deeper, and ask yourself this crucial question. How can the opponent untangle himself or herself if you give the move to black right now, right? You want to preserve this pin. This pin obviously is favoring white in this position, but if you give time to black, black will untangle themselves. So please tell me that powerful resource that wins the game for white. You're a great player, folks, if you found the move h4 or f4. These two moves are the only winning moves for white. You might wonder why. Well, the reason is this. If you make the more natural move, let's say king f1 to get the king involved, black has a beautiful resource, g5, to untangle themselves. They are breaking the pin by playing king g6 on the next turn, and the position is completely equal in this case. King e2, king g6, the knight is no longer pinned, it can move, it's complete equality. So what did we learn from this very first position? That prophylaxis is a huge tool in chess, right? You need to ask yourself always, what is my opponent's intention? In this case, you should observe by looking at this position that black is in dire needs of unpinning themselves to survive. Thus, once you ask yourself this question, h4 or f4 comes naturally, because now if they untangle with g5, of course you take that pawn and you win that knight on the next turn. That's easy. The same with f4, g5, f takes g5. White is winning. You see how you find the correct solution by asking yourself what the opponent wants to play? You see how you find the correct solution by reading the board properly, by evaluating the situation properly. This orientation phase is a huge part of chess calculation. What we also learned crucially from this example is why we should generally keep the pin rather than directly capturing a pinned piece in chess. Many beginners directly capture the pinned piece, thus they release the tension for the opponent's benefit. You see how white refuses to take that pin knight on f6. That will be a chess crime, right? Because you can always do it later. Why do you do it right now? That's the power of a pin in chess. Hugely important pattern. And now you see the strength of preserving the pin instead of directly releasing it. Here comes the second position, folks. I modeled this example from a game by David Bronstein. Okay, I cleaned this puzzle. The final function of this video is I will show you how I am cleaning up my puzzles for best learning outcomes. I am cleaning, weeding out the noise to let you to focus on the most important element that I want to teach you. So you don't get distracted by random details, you focus on the most important theme of the position. Please stop the video right now. Black to play. There is only a single winning move here for black. And you will tell me why that move is the winning move, okay? Take your time. Folks, you're a great player if you found the only winning move c4 in this position. You might wonder why. What is the relevance of the move c4? It looks like a ridiculous move. Well, this move becomes obvious once you ask yourself, how can white untangle themselves, right? Let's start from the very basics. The rook is pinned. You put pressure on that pinned rook on d2. Every single white piece is tied down in guarding that rook. Just like in the first position, that's the first orientation phase. So then the question becomes, how can white ever untangle themselves from this position, right? Naturally. How can white unpin that rook in this position? If you pay attention, white has an extra exchange plus 2 pawns. So if there's a way for white to untangle the rook and maybe enter into a position, into a rook endgame like that, then they would have an advantage, right? So it's black's interest to take the full piece instead of trading and only getting an exchange at some point. So your goal from this position should be, I want to take a free rook in this position and I'll be up a bishop in the resulting position, right? So please ask yourself right now, if you make a random move instead of playing c4, how can white untangle themselves? And that's the beautiful part of this puzzle, folks. For example, if you simply want to improve your king with king f7, white has a beautiful resource to untangle. They first go c4. Why? Because they want to go c3 on the next turn and play the move king c2. Can you see it, folks? This is the only way for white to unpin the rook while also finding a way to defend the rook on d2. The problem with the white king here is any king move right now will drop the rook for nothing, right? So once you dig deeper in this position, beautiful puzzle, that's the only way for white to untangle. Once c4 is on the board, you can no longer stop the move c3 followed by king c2, right? Please understand this. And any kind of pawn endgame you might envision is winning for white, because now white untangles, you're forced to take that rook right now. They recapture. If you go to a pawn endgame, you're lost because the king will find a way to defend the pawn on g2 and you're down 2 pawns. Eventually, the white king will improve and you're completely lost as black. So any other move besides c4 is also bad for black because white can untangle with these moves, and this position, if you take the rook, obviously is a much better rook endgame for white, right? They have 2 extra pawns in the resulting position. So we go back to this position. Please understand the strength of the move c4, folks. Please look at the white pawns. They are doubled, they cannot move, and if they cannot move, the king has no way to guard the rook. Well, they have some moves left on the board, but they will eventually run out. Bishop e3 is also nice because you're stopping g4, g5 to attack their bishop, and now everything is totally paralyzed. Please look at the white army. No white piece can move. There are only some pawn moves left, but they will soon come to an end. Just like here, king g6, white is in zugzwang. If they give away a couple of pawns, we simply take them. Even dropping back to g7 is winning for black, but we can collect both of these pawns, guys. They can give us a check, doesn't matter. King takes g5. Your problems remain in this position. Plus, black now has the extra h pawn as well. If you defend the rook like this, everything is winning for black. But even this line is completely winning because now you can even do this or improve your king and only then take that rook. And then this guy is queening, right? Clearly, this guy is queening and white cannot stop your pawn. And that's exactly why after king g6, white has no moves left. If they unpin like this, then we are winning. One full rook in this position. Eventually, we will find a way to unpin our bishop using these couple of moves. And black has an extra bishop with no compensation. White is completely lost. What are the lessons? You win this position by simply using prophylaxis. How can my opponent ever unpin themselves, right? You see the power of a pin. You would never take that pinned rook with your bishop. And many beginners, they just simply take material. They simply take a pinned piece just because the bishop is less powerful than the rook. Guys, the function of a pinned piece is close to nothing, right? You can always do it later. Why now? Let them suffer a little bit more, right? That's the mindset. When you have a piece that is pinning an opponent's piece, you simply enjoy the position for the moment. You don't directly take a pin piece because that clearly only helps white, right? They are begging you in this position to capture that rook, and many beginners don't have this mental model yet. This example nicely highlights what I mean by the strength of a pin and why you should generally preserve it. Now I will show you a different example that looks identical to the one we just saw, but I modified the position to also give you a beautiful pattern. Black to play. Ask yourself the very same question, folks. White is having an extra exchange plus one pawn, and how can they ever untangle themselves from this terrible situation? Folks, just like in the first example, the only way for white to untangle is c4 followed by c3 followed by king c2, right? So please tell me the only winning move for black in this position. And you're a great player if you found the move b5. b5 anticipates this untangling plan for white and thus gets ready for the move. You tell me. b4, of course. That's the only winning move because you anticipate the move c3, but that will never work for white because after b takes c3, the rook is pinned and will be captured on the next turn. Can you see the point of b5? Total prophylaxis. This move you find only, if and only, by asking yourself, what's the opponent's intention? What does my opponent want to do in this position, right? b5, also a beautiful pawn pattern, by the way. Pawn structure is changing and you're stopping the only try from white. Any kind of king move, you simply take on d2 with a completely winning position. Now, the final position, a beautiful follow-up to what we just saw. I modified it, I created a more complex example, but the underlying thought is the same. Black to play, tell me the only move that wins for black. Also tell me the reason. Again, folks, you're a great player if you found the move b5 because you anticipate this little try of c4 because your intention is to go b4 and white is completely lost in its position. But after b5, white can also try the move a3, correct? Well, again, ask yourself this question. What would my opponent do if I don't make a move right now? And the answer is c4 followed by c3, and they're untangling the position. They're unpinning their rook. Thus, please tell me the only winning move for black. Again, you're a great player if you found the move a5. Total prophylaxis. The only try is c4. Should we take the pawn or should we push to b4? Obviously, we push to b4 because your real intention is to stop the only try of c3 from white. If they do go c3, you take, and we see the power of the pin again. Black is completely winning in this position, folks. After b5, c4, well, if you take on c4 in this position, huge mistake. You see my point? Because you love c3, king c2 is coming, and white is unpinning themselves with a better position in the end. What did we learn in the end? To my mind, there are two big lessons. Pin is an extremely powerful tactical weapon, and usually we must preserve the pin instead of directly relinquishing it. And second of all, prophylaxis is a huge part of chess calculation. Always ask yourself what my opponent wants to play. Tactical threats, also positional ideas. Just like here, white's positional threat in this position is to unpin themselves, right? And the only way to do it is c4, c3, king c2. Beautiful, beautiful. Once you ask yourself these questions, sometimes you can find surprising moves that you will never consider from the get-go. So that's a function of always starting with this question. Am I facing a threat right now? What is their next move if I don't make a move right now? To my mind, that's the most important question in chess. You should always ask yourself this question whenever your opponent makes a move. Tell me what you learned from this puzzle, from this series of puzzles actually, and whether you had similar issues in your chess life before, and maybe some of your mental models have changed after this session. Was it easy for you really to find this untangling plan from the opponent, or were you inclined to make this impulsive move of capturing material with bishop takes d2 from this position? I hope I helped you change your mental models a little bit, and you will become a much stronger player. if you get the right lessons from here, folks. Please write your ideas on YouTube. I'm giving feedback to each and every one of you. I will continue in the next session of the anatomy of chess tactics. Bye-bye.